Hi, welcome to the Backhouse Lounge. I'm Dahlit Brin and I'm joined by my colleague Adekunle Adebisi, who's the Director Key Account MTN and Professional Services for Africa and APAC. Now, operators are faced with the problem of having to roll out 5G, increase capacity, and often opt for larger equipment. Now, Kunle, can you tell us from your experience in the field why this poses a huge problem for operators and what we can do to help alleviate the problem of tower on wireless infrastructure?
Thanks, Dalit. So the first thing is what we see traditionally with operators is that they generally are looking at how to reduce the cost of their operations. And there's two types of them. There's operators who typically own their own towers and infrastructure, and there's operators who lease these services. And the key elements are space on the tower, the weight of what you put on the tower, and the power that you provide in the indoor units. So they look at these things generally and say, how do I reduce these costs of all of this?
So that's a great question. So how can we?
Yes, so first off, what we do is we look at those three elements specifically. So when you talk about the antennas, we have super high power radios, first of all, that allows you to use lower size of antenna, which reduces the tower load. Extremely critical because of the densification that comes along with 5G. There's going to be so many sites, and the operators need to be able to utilize the infrastructure for as many sites as possible that they want to fulfill.
Right, and the smaller the equipment on the tower, that means the more sites they can roll out, because we've come across cases where the towers were totally overcrowded and they couldn't actually roll out more links, right?
Yeah, it's prime commodity when you put on the towers there. When you put the towers out there, you want to be able to use them as much as possible. And how we help them is to allow them to use smaller size antennas as much as possible. On top of that, we also have the radios, which are lower in weight compared to most of the competition. So you've got the savings on the antenna, lower size antennas, and then you've got the lower kilograms for the actual radios that go on the towers. So those are the major elements from the tower loading perspective. When you go into the infrastructure, there's more, because then you look at how much power do you consume inside of the shelters. So what we do is we also have the Ceragon radios have lower power consumption. So because these guys pay, they pay per kilowatt hour for the power that is in the sites. Even if you own the sites, you want to make sure that you can leverage and use as much more for other radios or other equipment that is needed.
Okay, so let's go back for a second to the number of radios antennas on the tower. Now, you did mention that there's a difference between those operators who own the towers and those who rent. Now, those who rent will have to pay rental fees, right? So they're interested in reducing those tower rents. Now, what can we do to help them put less equipment on the tower while enabling them to have as much capacity as they can to provide those 5G services to their customers?
So on top of what I just described regarding how we help them to have this smaller footprint on their infrastructure, we are also able to use the dual core in terms of putting the radios out there and being able to have the capacity they need without having to increase any of the infrastructure footprint. And this is important as well when they look at the overall tower and infrastructure required to put out the radios.
Okay, now can you tell us a bit about our ASD function that, brings about huge savings in terms of tower load and weight?
So the ASD is a game changer, Dalit. What happens with that is we're now using, traditionally 4 antennas are required for space diversity. With Ceragon's advanced space diversity, we have 3 antennas instead of 4. That is massive. So you look at straight at 25% reduction.
25% of CapEx and OpEx. Wow.
Absolutely.
Okay,
this is a game changer in the industry. We see that resonating a lot with our customers.
Okay, so what we're saying is that operators must provide more capacity in order to be part of the 5G race, and the bigger is not the better in the case of tower load. So thank you so much for giving us this insight. This is the Backhouse Lounge. See you next time.